Hello, my name is Brennan Wilson and today I'm critically examining the New South Wales Police Force Aboriginal Strategic Direction 2018 to 2023, the ASD, through the lens of the professional capabilities police need to work with and for Indigenous Australians. I'll cover over the strategies, background and scope, then assess how specific capabilities such as knowledge, skills, behaviours and specialist expertise support or fall short of its delivery, drawing on Indigenous perspectives, research and New South Wales contexts such as Redfern. I'll conclude with implications for self-determination, justice reinvestment and reducing overrepresentation.
What is the ASD? The ASD is a statewide Indigenous community engagement strategy designed to guide New South Wales Police interaction with Aboriginal communities from 2018 to 2023. It responds to long-standing concerns about Aboriginal overrepresentation and community harm first brought into sharp relief by the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. The ASD's stated intent is to improve Aboriginal community safety via partnership, prevention and early diversion, especially for young people, while embedding culturally safe practices within policing. The ASD set 4 priority areas. These are communication and understanding to improve trust and two-way communication with Aboriginal communities, partnerships to co-design and collaborate with Aboriginal organisations and partner agencies, safety and well-being of Aboriginal people with a diversion focus, and family safety and domestic violence, centering culturally safe responses. These priorities align with the National Agreement on Closing the Gap, especially shared decision-making and transforming government organisations to be culturally safe and free of racism. Operationally, the ASD investigated local police, Aboriginal consultative committees, Aboriginal community profiles and action plans, Aboriginal community liaison officers, staff training and targeted prevention grants. Historically, significant sites like Redfern are instructive. Post-2004 unrest, the principle of the right people for the job in Aboriginal communities, officers with cultural competence and community rapport became a practical litmus test for the ASD's intent to build trust through capability. The bottom line is the ASD's scope is comprehensive. It includes trainings, structure and prevention programs, seeking to turn principles into practice statewide. Professional capabilities needed to deliver the ASD. A. Knowledge. Officers need substantive knowledge of Aboriginal histories, including dispossession and stolen generation. They also need to know about cultural protocols, such as kinship and sorry business. And there's also contemporary systemic bias that they need to know about. The ASD mandated cultural awareness and competency training and local community inductions. This knowledge base is essential to interpret context, such as Aboriginal English and non-verbal communication, and this is to avoid re-traumatisation. Research links historically informed understanding to improved procedural justice and legitimacy among First Nations communities. B. Interpersonal and communication skills. Trust hinges on respectful, clear and empathetic communication, listening, explaining decisions and tailoring engagement to local norms. ACLOs and community forums, such as PACCs, are mechanisms for dialogue and relationship building. Interpersonal skills are especially crucial with young people and during volatile incidents where trauma, grief or mental health issues are present. C. Behaviours. Cultural safety requires officers to identify and counter bias, act fairly and uphold human rights. The ASD explicitly commits New South Wales Police to call out racism, discrimination and bias. Behavioural capability also means using discretion ethically. For example, preferring cautions or referrals where appropriate, and ensuring custody notification service procedures are followed. D. Specialist expertise. Modern Indigenous engagement requires capabilities beyond traditional enforcement. Trauma-informed practice recognises trauma impacts and avoid harmful tactics. Community-based policing involves working with elders, ACLOs and Aboriginal organisations on locally designed initiatives. Restorative diversionary responses prioritises cautions, youth justice conferencing and community-led solutions over prosecution where suitable. Data-informed prevention aligns efforts to evidence and evaluating outcomes. In short, professional capability is not just awareness training, it is day-to-day practice that is historically literate, relational, ethical, and skilled in division, healing, and community partnership. Moving on to the critical examination, how capability supported or fell short of delivery. The strengths in delivery include cultural access, engagement structures, and diversion and restoration. In relation to training architecture and resources, the ASD embedded cultural awareness, Aboriginal community inductions, and encouraged local action planning. Many officers report improved understanding of Aboriginal protocols, and some commands developed richer local knowledge via partnerships. In relation to structures that normalise engagement, ACLOs, PACCs, and the ASD prevention grants enabled practical collaboration. Commands that invested in relationships, for example co-hosting community events and supporting youth programs, saw better rapport and fewer escalations. These structures operationalise interpersonal capability by creating predictable contact points beyond enforcement. In relation to diversion and restorative pathways for youth, increased use of cautions, conferences, and police-supported community programs such as midnight basketball, cultural camps, and mentoring are consistent with specialist capabilities in restorative and prevention practice. Where applied well, they are associated with positive community perceptions and participation. The logic behind aligning with the Closing the Gap reform, the ASD's framing, shared decision-making, transforming police culture, reflects an ethics-based capability stance and provides a public accountability narrative. Now moving on to the weaknesses and gaps, there is inconsistent implementation of training and local knowledge. The LECC 2023 found variations in coverage and depth. Some staff lacked the working with Aboriginal community training or refresher. Local environmental scans were not always co-produced with Aboriginal representatives. Capability on paper did not always translate into capability in every officer or shift. ACLOs broker trust but are too few, often day shifted and stretch across multiple tasks. Career pathways and remuneration have lagged the roles critically. Without enough ACLO capacity, interpersonal capability in commands depends too heavily on a small number of specialists. Despite ASD intentions, indicators of over-policing remained. Advocacy and monitoring bodies reported disproportionately high charging of Aboriginal people and significant increases in police bail refusals relative to courts, which drive remand and exacerbate overrepresentation. This signals a behavioural capability gap. Anti-racism and cultural safety commitments were not systematically shaping frontline discretion. Proactive targeting regimes applied to children, including many Aboriginal young people, were criticised as unjust and counter-therapeutic, clashing with trauma-informed diversionary capability. Their rollback underscores how core practices must align with the ASD or they will undermine it. While training touches on intergenerational trauma, crisis responses often remained enforcement-led rather than therapeutic, and police were sometimes drawn to criminalising behaviour in out-of-home care that warranted a care-led response. This is a specialist expertise gap, scaling de-escalation, co-response with health, and post-incident healing supports. To evaluate accountability, the LECC 2023 noted unclear accountability for closing the gap metrics within police, and a lack of precise, trackable ASD performance indicators. Without clear measures and community-endorsed targets, for example increasing in diversion, decreases in charges and remand, capability improvements can't confidently be linked to outcomes. The synthesis is, the ASD improved capabilities and created useful structures, but delivery was limited by inconsistent training uptake, resource constraints, persistence of discretionary practices counter to cultural safety, and insufficiently institutionalized trauma-informed and diversionary tools. The capability baseline lifted, but not uniformly or deeply enough to shift statewide outcomes. Self-determination and partnerships. Self-determination means Aboriginal people meaningfully shape decisions affecting their safety and well-being. The ASD set up partnership mechanisms, PASAC, PACCs, promoted co-design, and committed to calling out racism. Where community governance led and police supported, for example community-owned youth programs in Sydney and regional towns, trust and uptake improved. Exemplars include relationships forged through Redfern initiatives with Aboriginal organisations focusing on early morning, boxing, mentoring and cultural connection. However, Indigenous stakeholders criticised consultation gaps around the next engagement plan and the lack of shared accountability for justice outcomes, signalling partnership capability shortfalls at the strategic level. Genuine self-determination requires resourcing Aboriginal leadership and governments of policing strategies, structured co-decision mechanisms, not just advisory, and transparent, jointly reviewed targets. Increasing Aboriginal employment and leadership within New South Wales Police supports this, but numbers and seniority remain limited, so the behavioural and organisational capability to share power is still maturing. Justice reinvestment over representation and capability. Justice reinvestment redirects resources from late-stage enforcement to early prevention and community-led solutions. The ASD's diversion emphasis aligns with justice reinvestment, but scaling requires data-driven, place-based planning and rigorous evaluation. The Burke-Maranguka project, community-led with police collaboration, reported reductions in family violence incidents, youth charges, and adult custody days alongside education gains and economic savings, illustrating what happens when police specialist capabilities, restorative community-based data-informed, are embedded in an Aboriginal governed plan. Statewide, however, Aboriginal adult imprisonment and youth overrepresentation remain high. This suggests that capability uplift inside policing must be paired with systematic justice reinvestment, co-funded prevention, health, housing, education, and police performance metrics that value less contact where safe and appropriate. It also means aligning discretionary practice, bail cautions, charge decisions, with diversion goals to avoid net widening. To come to the conclusion in my recommendations, the ASD 2018 to 2023 was a significant principled strategy. It clarified expectations, invested in training and structures, and aligned policing rhetoric with cultural safety and partnership. Capability uplift occurred, but inconsistently. Critical weaknesses over policing patterns, under-resourced liaison roles, uneven trauma-informed practice, and unclear accountability constrained outcomes. Aboriginal communities and research call for a deeper self-determination, measurable change, and justice reinvestment at scale. My recommendations are: make core capability universal, resource and elevate ACLOs, align discretion with cultural safety, institutionalise trauma-informed health-led responses, share power in governments, and back justice reinvestment. I will get into each one of these now. Make core capability universal. This means mandating and tracking completion of cultural and trauma-informed training for all staff with regular refreshers, embedding local Aboriginal history and protocols co-produced with community into command inductions, and assessing interpersonal capability in supervision and promotion. Resource and elevate ACLOs means expand ACLO positions, including after-hours coverage, improve pay and career pathways, and position ACLOs as strategic advisors to command, not only community conduits. Align discretion with cultural safety. This means issue practice directives linking cautions, referrals, and bail recommendations to diversion goals. Require supervisors to review patterns by location and cohort. Publish de-identified dashboards to build transparency and trust. Institutionalize trauma-informed health-led responses. This means scale police, health, co-response, and post-incident support with Aboriginal community-controlled health organisations, prioritising therapeutic pathways for children in care as well. Share power in governments means establish co-decision arrangements with Aboriginal peak bodies and local organisations for any new engagement strategy. This also means to co-set clear, publicly reported targets, for example, diversions are up and remands down. Back justice reinvestment. Partner on Aboriginal governed justice reinvestment like Maranguka and measure police success by prevention diversion indicators, not just enforcement metrics. If adopted, these steps embed the professional capabilities the ASD envisioned, knowledgeable, skilled, ethical, and specialist practice into everyday policing, better honouring Indigenous self-determination and improving safety for everyone. My name is Brendan Wilson, and thank you for watching.